Yeah.
It's on. If you see at the top. Yeah.
I just saw it. I did it. I'm feeling so good today. So gathering in all of you in this space, welcome, 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 welcome. We are gathering around the table. And I hope that you have brought with you this morning your coffee, your tea, your morning beverage, so we can come and sit around the table here in conversation with partners this morning, gathering from the Christian tradition, the Jewish tradition, the Muslim tradition, Buddhist, Hindu, and the African ancestral faith traditions. We are gathering for Saturday Selah. And this Selah series is one that has come out of my heart and out of community. Weekly moments of pause and sacred reflection. And today is a most holy and sacred day for us in the Christian tradition, as it is the in-between. It is the Holy Saturday moment. This is the day that after the horror and the bearing witness at the cross and the lynching tree. It is the moment, the day after the state-sanctioned violence in which those that were gathered watched and viewed. It is the day after the horror of crucifixion and the day before the hope of resurrection. And so it is the in-between day. And oftentimes in our tradition, in our Christian tradition, unfortunately, we have overlooked, we have passed that, we have jumped beyond it so that we can get to the hope of resurrection. And oftentimes this happens because we already are hopeless and walking around with so much tragedy, so much despair, so much injustice that we are living with, that it is one of those things that unfortunately we run to the hope of resurrection and miss all that God would have for us to gain in the Selah. And so we'll talk a little bit about Selah, as my brother, Reverend McQueen, and I were talking this morning just about what it means and how the word itself is a musical word. It's used, of course, in the text, and we share the same holy text in the First Testament and New Testament, where we see it in the First Testament, we see Selah as a pause. So know where we're to pause in between the music, in between the verses of the music. And so again, where do we pause in between the cacophony of sound and of movement in the earth and in the world? When do we take the time to pause and reflect on all that is happening? And so this particular moment of Selah, we are gathering with our multi-faith partners and siblings and sisters and brothers to have an exploration about what holds us in this time of grief. We literally have been journeying on what seems to be and feels like the in-between Holy Saturday moment for over a year now in this pandemic. And so we want to talk with our faith in our respective faith traditions, because sometimes the rituals in which we hold on to, sometimes the things that we have been clinging to within our own faith traditions are no longer serving us. And so what are the traditions that come from our siblings in multiple faith traditions that might give us wisdom and might help us to be able to hold on to and look for new ways to help us navigate through grief, new ways to help us navigate through trials, right? So how do the traditions and the grief rituals of our faith community, multiple faith community, help us? So this is what you have joined us today. You've joined in our conversation that we have been having and journeying with some of us within this holy alliance. We have been journeying with one another for some time, and Reverend McQueen will share a little bit about that. And so this is one of the things across our table, the table across time, that we have called it. And Reverend McQueen will share a little bit about that. But as we center ourselves this morning, I want to share some music, because music also grounds us in this Selah experience. Music is something that helps us during our time of grief. Music is something that speaks to our very souls. And so I want to ask you to pause with me for a moment as we just hear now the beautiful expression of music that comes from two of our interns that shared with us before, and the music that they have for us. And I want to just to play that for us now. I'm sorry, this is the wrong song. We are going to hear that song later on in our time together. But here we go. Please forgive me, friends. And I'm grateful to be among friends, so that you know. Let us hear what Spirit is saying. I hope you were blessed by that. Leslie Vonner is taking lead on that, as well as our dear sister who is also joining her on horn today. And that was a piece by Mr. Becton. It was All Good Things. I want to make sure that I'm giving you the correct Yeah. All good things will be added unto you by Shelton Beckton. And I am just deeply grateful for the both of them sharing with us. And in a time when things don't seem like there's any good thing at all that can come, I'm grateful for Shanice and for Leslie just sharing with us that music, helping us to know that all good things will come. And now to hear from our faith partners so we can enter into this good conversation. And as you all are joining us, and we'll be taking our questions and things afterwards, because this is a conversation that we're having. Thank you so much. And so I'm grateful for these beautiful souls that have joined me this morning. And I want to just briefly introduce them to you all and ask the question that we were posing to everyone before, but I will let them share a little bit more about where they are serving, but I want you to know who our conversation partners are this day. Reverend Dr. Derrick McQueen is the senior pastor of St. James Presbyterian Church, and he is joining us. He is also a part of our sacred circle that we will circle up, and he will share a little bit more about our table across time when it comes. Our Rabbi Amichai Lau-Lavie is with us. He is the founding spiritual leader of LabShul, New York, and one of the founders of Storah Incorporated. And he'll share a little bit more about their journey. Our dear sister, Naz Ahmed Georgas, executive director of the Cordoba House. Assalamu alaikum to you, my dear sister. So grateful to have you this morning joining us in this conversation. We are also a part of a sister circle that meets up regularly to have conversations across interfaith and multi-faith traditions, non-faith traditions, to have conversations about spirituality and how God shows up in our lives as women in the struggle. And my dear sister, Reverend Doyeon Park, is here, and she is blessing us from the Manhattan One Buddhist Temple. And we have been journeying together through the UN, through the Committee on the Religious NGOs, as well as many other of our working groups in the UN community. So grateful to be able to have you and to bless us this morning. Our dear Reverend Dr. TK Nakagaki is also the same, journeying with you in the spaces in which we're traversing, in the UN spaces and in the non-governmental organization spaces. Thank you for taking time for us. He is the president of the Buddhist Council of New York, and he is joining us from the temple there. You are former president. Yes, I'm sorry. I remember now, former president. You're reminding me. Yes. I will get that correct, dear sir. Also, we have our Guru Dilip Ji. We're so grateful for you. Dilip Kumar Tapkapan. We're grateful for you, a founder of the World Yoga Community Incorporated, and who brings the world together, honestly, on every occasion. And so grateful for you and for your presence here. And speaking to the Hindu tradition, as well as you will share from your own faith tradition, having a mother who was in the Christian faith, and also parents from a Hindu, and what that means. Such a gift to be able to have you with us. And my dear sister, Mawasi, Reverend Estee, Nena, Dillard, Mawasi Fola, Makoroto, we're blessing you. We're blessing God for you, Ashe. So grateful for you as the curator of Endless Spiritual Consulting, LLC, and also from the Rise Community Church in Atlanta. So deeply grateful for all of you and for your presence here, for your sharing, and for the gifts of your presence in my life, and then in the life of the faith community at large. And so for all of you here, just so that you know, I posed to our conversation partners a question. I want to read something for you first. And then I want to ask you the question that we were posed so that we can begin this conversation. I wrote a reflection on Holy Saturday last year, when we were just a few months into this well, really 1 month and a few days into the pandemic last year. And we were all sheltering in place, and we were all wondering what was going on. And we experienced, for us in the Christian tradition, again, our high holy days separated from families, separated from our communities of faith. And so I wrote this, and I want then I will ask the question for you to respond. I sat down in the in-between place today. Grief was my companion, as she has been for so many during these indescribably difficult days. There was no funeral service, no repast, only silence, reflection, wonder, and feelings of despair. Grief is not a welcomed friend, but has become a constant companion. She will obviously be with us, for a while on this journey. So I will be gentle with myself and learn how to listen. This is Holy Saturday, the in-between place, after crucifixion and before resurrection. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy will come in the morning. This was my Holy Saturday reflection, and it is truly as if I would have written it yesterday or this morning. It's still the same feelings. And so my question to you, faith partners, conversation partners this day, is what was it like when you first met grief? What was it like when you first met grief? And I'll just add this other second part of the question. How has it been journeying with her over this past year, personally and in your own communities of faith? What was it like when you first met grief? And how has it been journeying with her, these year and change? It's a conversation. So whoever feels led to begin. Dr. TK, is that you saying yes? Or is it Guruji?
Yeah.
Guruji, go first.
Okay. When pandemic happened, I traveled to India, and they asked me, where are you coming from? I said, I'm coming from America. Okay, sir, you can go. There's no checking on me. But when I'm coming back, it was very hard for me to see. There's no one in the airport. I am the first one in the airport. It's a silent. There are only 60 people in the plane. I reached in Abu Dhabi, full plane. There's no space. I felt really scared because Corona can come anytime. People are running around. Reached in New York, nobody's there to check on me. I said, what is going on? I was like empty. I cannot think anything. Spaced out, really. Then I don't know what to do. Everything closed. Next day, airport closed. I am lucky I'm back. Then I reach out to my friends and call and ask, are you okay? First thing I start. And it took 1 month to prepare myself to start an online program. I'm not a computer person. So I had to learn myself first. Interact with people. I even visited a few people. Physically I went and called the mayor's office, got some masks and start giving out to people. I said, maybe I die tomorrow, fine. But still, I want to serve my people. I took that decision. Every day, still I go 60 blocks, walk around. I make sure everybody have a mask. This is the way I move. Continuously putting programs and talk with the people day and night across the world. I felt I had to do something and see what is real action towards this COVID time, how to get rid of this virus, how all the people are playing with this situation. I want to find out. This is not supposed to happen in the future. That's the way I focus myself and serving. That's it. Just pray for them. That's the only thing I can do. Nice.
Were you personally touched by grief this year?
Yes, I had, because over 130 people of my friends passed away because of Corona.
Oh.
Majority of them are in New York City or clergy leaders. And some of our yoga people got Corona, but they escaped because they have the discipline in their life. They won't eat meat and all that stuff. So they take less food. And I told them, take natural medicines to get the immunity up, and don't take too much milk products because that will make cough or phlegm in the body. So we give some ideas, and then we had homeopathic medicine to get some precautions. The vaccine started only a few months back, Before that is very hard. And try to take more fruits and vegetables, so at least immunity will go up,
Mhm. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. Dr. TK.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Actually, the first, I don't have many people who I really know passed away, but then only recently this year, after the medicines available, but then he got COVID and then passed away. The sad thing is actually nobody can see him even still, right? If he's died by the COVID. I just say I'm not going to say the name of the person in particular, but then especially his even wife, or was not officially married. That's why it was even cannot see him. And then every day you go to the hospital, and then it was a physical. I mean, I thought it would be something like, for me is also like I live in Japan and somebody passed. I mean, I'm living here in the United States, but then somebody passed away in Japan, I can't go. So it's like grieving here. But then you might feel a little more frustrated, this time because it's close enough, but yet to be able to go, but yet you can't see. That's a little big, for me, it was a little, didn't aware of that particular one. I feel like it's far, so maybe we just do the prayer, but yet some difficulty this time is such close by. You can go to the hospital, in front of the hospital, but yet you can't come in. And then it's just, so that's a little one of the very difficult times. But then later, of course, after he passed away, we have little prayer. So together, like in Buddhism, we do have like after, of course, somebody passed away, and then there was the funerals. But then after that, also 49 days, it's like the kind of memorial day that we have. So we just observed one 49th day a couple of weeks ago now. But then I feel like even though we can't meet, or in the end, that's very difficult to do all those things, but yet something we can do. And then the little, what do you call it, calmness, and then the especially the girlfriend was very happy to have something like that to be able to do together. It's actually personally, we just do it really privately this time, because that person was so always a lot of people came, so that's why even like so much going on, so it seems like no time to really have a time to grieve. But then the moment that we have a private connection with the little chanting and meditations, and that feel kind of make it really calm. And so that's what I just wanted to share with you.
Yeah, and I'm hopefully, because we will be talking more about how you actually practice and remember and memorialize those who have died and passed on from this life to the next in your tradition. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. So I'd love for you and Doyeon to share, Reverend Doyeon, to share a little bit more about the 39 days, because we have practices similar in some of our traditions. But now, I mean, and thank you for sharing about the ways in which grief showed up, and how it was when you first met grief. I have personified her purposely. And so I want to know about that. So thank you for your sharing. Reverend McQueen, Pastor, would you like to share?
Certainly. I first met grief during this COVID season during Bible study. I received a text several times, and I'm like, people know I'm in Bible study. Why are they texting me? But it was my Aunt Eleanor who had just who was trying to reach me to tell me that my father had died. And I was in shock. I was in the middle of, expounding on scriptures and sort of being with the community, and that was part of how we were dealing with some of the grief from COVID, was coming together as community in many different ways. And to get that, I was literally transfixed, and I realized that she was sitting there with me. Grief was sitting there with me. And as I was processing that over the next week or so, then a very, very, very good ministerial friend, colleague, she passed away very suddenly, like within 4 days. And the most interesting thing for me was that because grief had decided that we would be companions through my process, I was able to share grief's wisdom with a larger community that was grieving this minister friend of mine, if that makes any sense. So grief and I became companions of, and she helped me to discern much about life and the process of life. And what she also allowed me to do throughout this entire pandemic was, in the spaces of people leaving, there was no time, there was no funeral for my father. There was no memorial for my father. His ashes were shipped to my brothers. But it was a matter of, since there's none of that coming together, a lot of the family angst and the family issues that you always revisit during the times when people pass, grief said, let that go. And it was one of the most powerful things that grief said, let it all go, because I've got some love that I need to pour into you so that you can celebrate life. That the persons with whom you're grieving, who you want to be here with you, who you want to call and speak to, they are with you in this love, and they are guiding you and moving you forward. I very much believe in that the ancestors are in that in-between space between old age and birth, is much the culture in many African communities. And I literally understood that grief was saying, opening up the doorway to me for the ancestors to be able to work with me and be with me. And I've been able to share that over the past year in many different ways, in many different funerals that I've had to, where I've had to lead those funerals and lead those going home ceremonies, especially for communities that are so used to thinking that there would be 125 people there at the funeral, and there's just the family and a Zoom lens. But to be able to share that grief is your companion in this way, to allow that life to continue to speak with you, has been the lesson that I've learned on how to bring grief as a not a joyous, but a comforting companion in the community of faith, as she has witnessed herself in my life. So I've learned a lot about grief and how to journey with her, and how to allow her to be the comfort that she wants to be, and to not be afraid of her. I had so much fear for grief personally that I navigated and helped other folks navigate before. But my fear of walking with grief has been replaced by this relationship with her that is comforting and allows me to bring comfort.
Thank you. And we continue to journey with you, and as you hold your father in your heart and your entire community, Ashe, we hold you and your brother. Dear Sister Naz, Assalamu alaikum to you, and tell us, what was it like when you first met grief, and how has it been journeying with her and your community this past year? We can't hear you, my dear.
Well, our community is 100% online since the pandemic, like most of the communities. And we have approximately 400 people meeting every week for Jummah Khutbah. And for me, I think that it's most meaningful for me to speak from the perspective of a spiritual director and administrator who has been weekly administering this community as well as a meditation community on Friday nights and Sunday mornings. And our community is multi-generational, which means that when something happens, it doesn't just hit, an older generation or a particular group of people. Grief hits, it can hit anybody at any time. And you have to be in that particular role of just moving forward, being even keeled, nourishing yourself at the same time as you are providing administrative and spiritual support, like most of the programs. For us, what we have been receiving on a weekly basis since the pandemic, at the height of it, up until I think almost March or until last month, 2 or 3 people per week that we had to online provide support for people who passed away. And I'm sure that this is the same for many of us. And in between that, we receive a lot of other calls for people who have cancer, for example, are terminally ill, even last night, and who have passed away from other circumstances, not necessarily the pandemic. And for me, what really holds me, to be honest, is the perspective that most of us as Muslims, myself especially, being a servant of the community, that I keep in mind is really the saying of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is to go through life as if you're a traveler, as if you're just traveling from one place to another place. And the travel should be pleasant, but we should not hold on to something as if it's forever, because it's ever changing. I'd also like to just to put this into context. I know that it's almost 11:07, and I don't know if I'll be able to talk a little bit more about how our community sees us through, but I also would like to put in perspective, if I may, a verse from the Quran, actually, which is the holy book of Muslims, as many of you know. It does not so much focus on grief. And this is very interesting. It focuses a lot more on resurrection and what's to come afterwards. It also focuses a lot on the fact that this life is temporary for all of us. So do what you need to, help other people, help yourselves, but just remember that you're here for a short while. And I just, if I may, there's a poet, that is very well known. He's from the 14th century. His name is Ibn Ataullah. He's a Sufi poet. And he said something, Reverend Doyeon, that when you asked me, you invited me to this beautiful program, the first line that came to my mind was from his poetry. And it's not really just poetry, it's spiritual poetry, where he's a Sufi who's deeply connected to God. And what he talks about is really at the crux of what the Quran is trying to say. And he says, that God has expanded you, means he's made you feel full, in the fullness of your joy, in the fullness of your days. He expanded you so as not to keep you contracted all of the time. But then he contracted you so as not to keep you expanded all of the time. And then he took you out of both contraction and expansion so that you know that you do not belong to anything else except for him. And I think that this really defines the journey of life for most Muslims, or every Muslim, where God says, in the Quran in particular, and another verse which I really wanted to share directly talks about resurrection. And it has the word resurrection in it. And I just want to take a few moments because it's a very, very powerful verse. And here it's from the 22nd chapter of the Quran, where God says, human beings, if you are in doubt as to the truth of resurrection, then remember that we have created you out of nothing but dust. Then out of a small drop of sperm. Then out of that sperm, we created a small cell. And out of that cell, we created an embryo. And out of that embryo, which looked complete in itself, yet it was incomplete, so that we make you, we made your origin, and we make this very clear to you. And whatever we will, And whatever we will to be born, we cause it first to rest in her mother's womb for a particular time that we will set. And then we bring you forth as infants, and we allow some of you to live, and we make some of you die. Just as many of you we reduce to old age, where you do not remember anything. And if, O man, O humanity, if you are still in doubt of resurrection, then consider this, that when you see the earth, at times you see it lifeless and dry, but then we cause rain to come down upon it, and it swells up and puts forth every kind of lovely plant in spring. So this really is a promise, I believe, from God. First of all, it's a reminder that, look, you were nothing to start off with, and you will come back to us. Some of you will live to an old age, some of you won't. But if you're still in doubt about everything and whether you'll come back again, whether spring happens again, just look at the plants. Look at the trees outside. You have winter, it becomes barren, and then you have spring, and surely it comes back again. So this is something that I wanted to share.
Thank you so much. I wanted to also, and I know you may have to leave us a little early, but as we go to Rabbi Amichai and Reverend Doyeon and Mawasi, if you before we do, I would like to ask you though too, Naz, is there a reason? Again, I mean, because it's such a beautiful reading from the Quran as you're sharing, and also to know that resurrection is included in that as well. And I wanted, because part of the conversation we were talking about was, why don't we pause to feel what we're feeling? And is that a bad thing to pause and feel what we're feeling? All of the emotions that we feel when death comes, when there is sorrow, when there is all of that. So is there no space for it in our traditions? Is there no space, or do we always rush through it so that we can feel better and that we can get to the hope of the next? And we don't lose hope, because in our text, in our biblical text, we also have the scripture that says that we grieve, but we do not grieve as those who have no hope. And so there's hope that is there, and we keep it, but there's still space for the grief, right? Is there room for that in the Muslim faith?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I was going to choose another much shorter line this morning, but I decided to just talk about this one.
Oh, we need them all. We need them all. We need them all. Don't worry.
The other line came from a surah, the chapter of the Quran called the Bee, Surah An-Nahl, and it's chapter 16, number 65, where God says, he asks us to reflect and to look outside and to look upon the barren land, and that he sends upon rain, the exact same verse. And then, except he ends this verse by saying, will you then not stop and listen? And that pause, God says, listen to your thoughts, because we often feel that there's something called waswasa, which is sometimes referred to as negative, where you get negative thoughts. But there's also inspiration, which are the thoughts from God and his angels. And here, God is saying, will you then not listen? Listen to what? We can't listen to anything outside. Listen to him. Just listen to your hearts. So there's plenty of room. And often in the Quran, many verses, at the end of the verse, you'll see, will you then not reflect? So I think that these moments of grief, I can't remember which, there was a Catholic saint who had said that it is in grief that we see God. And this is what this means. Where are we seeing him? We're perceiving him, because we finally have time to stop. And we finally have time to realize that no matter where we look is the face of God. But it's not in grief until we're able to pause and really see.
Wonderful. That's so helpful. Thank you so very, very much. Rabbi Amichai, Mawasi, and then Reverend Doyeon, will you share?
Thank you. Good morning. Naz, thank you for bringing in the beautiful surah about the plants. coming back in spring. I'm looking outside my window and I'm seeing that the bulbs that I planted on the Saturday in November when we found out that Biden-Harris won, I was busy planting bulbs in my backyard. I'm like, woo, yes. And now I'm seeing the daffodils and the hyacinths peeking their heads after this long winter and after this long year of discontent. Just that is a way to illustrate your beautiful teaching. And I want to share that I'm so, Reverend Doyeon, when we first started working together, when we decided to rise from the rubble together, to combine some of the Jewish days and the Christian days as America was wrestling with the burning of churches in the South. And we decided not just to focus on the burning of the temple in Jerusalem way back, but to channel that energy of mourning and grief into the contemporary focus on what's broken. So we can be in the rubble, pause in the rubble, grieve in the rubble, and then rise. And here we are, years later, our friendships have deepened, the rubble is still here, so is the rising. And if you don't grieve, you don't rise, really deeply. And I feel that today, on this day, Holy Saturday, in the middle of the Easter weekend, that I've grown to learn and appreciate so much. On the Jewish calendar, today is the 7th of Passover. It's the 7th day since the Exodus from Egypt. In our tradition, on the day on which the enslaved Hebrews crossed the Sea of Reeds that open up miraculously towards freedom, like the last hurdle. And in this complicated mythology between the Jewish and the Christian and all the other faith traditions we have here, there's an invitation to pause not just on grief, but on patience, and how to let every step on the way to liberation, our internal one, our external one, our collective one, the one that we are aspiring to be allies for in all ways, the patience of letting the grief be, not to shoo it away, to allow the tears to purify, to allow the fear to be looked at, and to allow the grief to be present so we can hear each other's pain. Because we all take turns being in deep grief. We heard some of the losses this past year. And so I want to say something about one of the Jewish traditions of grief that this past year took on new meaning in some way. On March 15th last year, just over a year ago, I started a daily online ritual called the Soul Spa, where we at 3 p.m. every day pause to meditate, to share poetry, to invite people to share what's on their hearts, and to share the mourner's prayer and a healing prayer. And Reverend Derrick joined us quite a few times to help hold holy space. And with every day from March until July, when we went from daily to 3 times a week, we held space for mourners. And the mourners came with personal losses from COVID, and people shared losses that were not COVID related. And when George Floyd was killed, we held space for the grief and the shock and the rage that kept rising with so many of us. And with the administration and with all the indignities that kept coming up. And this tradition still continues. We, like many other people in our tradition, daily pause to honor the grief of people. And there's a whole year's process worth of honoring grief as a way to patiently let, like Naz said, the plants to grow from inside the contraction into the expansion. And that's been powerful, and that keeps being, and I cry easily. You all who know me know that. And the daily soul spas were just heartbreaking for so many of these many months of personal and collective grief. I want to say just one more thing that really connects, that's been on my heart these last couple of days. The Jewish story of crossing the Sea of Reeds, whether it happened exactly as it is in the scriptures or not, is the metaphor for the birth canal, for splitting the sea so you can go out. And it occurred to me as yesterday on Good Friday, I was with friends in faith, noting the enormity of this day, that there is the story in the Gospels that when Jesus is dead, that unbelievable moment of the death of hope, the curtain in the Holy Temple rips in two. The veil that connects the sacred and the secular or the mundane rips. And there's this like unbelievable metaphor of the ripping of the sea in two and the ripping of the veil in two as a sign of saying, this is grief. We're ripping. And that which is torn will not be put together, even as the sea will cover up and the curtain will come back. And in the Jewish tradition, there's something we do called kri'ah, which means to rip. When someone close to you dies within the 5 categories of proximity of kin, you rip your shirt. And nowadays, in more modern grief-averse culture, you rip a ribbon, a black ribbon on your lapel. And there were so many times this past year when I stood with mourners across Zoom screens and instructed them to rip a ribbon or a lapel or shirt. And on this day, I'm feeling the rip. I'm feeling the rip of yesterday's Good Friday. I'm feeling the rip of this past year. And I'm feeling the rip with reading about what's happening in our southern border right now. I'm reading the rip about what's happening with our climate. I'm reading the rip from like reading every day the news from the trial in Minneapolis, and so many rips. And how we handle it is by this gathering. So we come together to witness the rip and witness the grief and be as patient as we can through it. So we don't look away from the grief. Maybe that's the only way to let the daffodils grow when it's time for them to grow.
Thank you, Amichai. Thank you so much, Rabbi. I felt that, and I think we all feel it palpably. And to know that there are the ways in which we see the crossing of the Reed Sea, and then so I never thought about it in that way. Those two spaces in terms of the ripping of the temple in two, and the ripping and the opening of the sea, the parting and the going. You may be helping me with my sermon tomorrow. Amen. What about, that is sacred and holy. And so thank you for blessing us with that. I know Reverend Doyeon and Mawasi Dillard, I want for you to be able to share, please. And then we have a pause, Guruji. Well, either one of you, whichever you, Mawasi, I see you unmuted, please share.
Yeah, I will be concise, but I took your question quite literally when you asked, when did I first meet her? And I remember that moment clearly. I was about 9 years old, and my grandmother's oldest sister, who was most dear to her, in black lineages, we have Big Mama. And so Big Mama died when my mama was in high school, and Aretha Bell had taken the helm of Big Mama's mantle, so to speak, and was our matriarch. And when I was a child, Aretha Bell died. My grandmother, she wasn't a person that held a lot of sadness or sorrow. Her emotions were much more about happiness and joy and laughter. But my grandmother, when she would grieve, she would always have a moment that seemed to happen in the car. It was something about leaving the sacred space of the sanctuary and going to the retreat of the car that I remember it happening multiple times. But the first time I experienced it was at Aunt Aretha Bell's funeral. And my grandfather, my grandmother, my mother, and I all got in the vehicle together, and my grandmother broke. And I remember the pain in my chest that I felt. Ooh. When the weight that my grandmother had left her sister in the cemetery fell all over her. And she wept for about 3 minutes in fear of what was next, in sorrow of what was lost. and in anticipation of what was to come and the trepidation of that process. And then Grandma Pauline took a moment, dabbed her face, rolled her shoulders back, and said, all right, Josami, that's what she called my granddaddy, we can leave. That was when I met grief. And I remember what that felt like in my body before I knew it and understood it for myself. And for me, it's that moment when it holds its space in your body, when you can feel the anxiety of it, when you can touch it like it's a person that you know, when you can call it to you like a friend that you got a tumultuous relationship with, but that you know you got to hold on to because they're gonna be here either way, you know. And for me, grief and COVID started when I had to call my partner who was on a plane to Switzerland for vacation that was a long time coming and tell her, baby, you got to turn around and come home. There's a travel ban. And the grief that I felt her experience on that call after completing a 9.5-hour flight, the grief of missing rest, the grief of having the opportunity to know what you know and have expectations that can be met, the grief of touch, you know. I'm a person who's very tactile. So the ability to hug my elders and to see my mama regularly. I have lost people due to COVID. I've had more personal transitions though that were unrelated to COVID, but that happened in the COVID season. So the loss of even rituals as we know them, the ability to have rituals like funerals in ways that are sacred to us, where we can do things like touch the flowers and sit with the body and sit with the family and sit with the pastor and sit with the elders of the community, to be sitting up in the house. For Black folk, that's sacred ritual. When somebody transitions, we all go to the house, the funeral comes, set up chairs, we sit around in circles, we sing songs, we eat chicken, we make spaghetti, we fry fish, right? All of these are parts of the sacred ritual that heal and create space for us. Where is the space? That's what we've lost. We've lost the ability to be able to know and see what feels familiar and what has had an efficacy for our spirit. We've lost those that we love in a context that we weren't prepared for. And I think it's okay to grieve that it happened the way it happened, and to grieve that it is the way it is, and to grieve that the rollout of precautions was ridiculously poorly done. right? I have one of my father's fraternity brothers is the funeral director at our home city. And a couple of weeks ago, I lost an extended family member, and we had to wait because he had so many bodies that we could not have service for her because, and this was 2 weeks ago, right? So this is not when the waves were high. 2 weeks ago, he had so many bodies that he was like, I'm so sorry, I can't even meet with the family for a week. So forced waiting and liminal space, compounded upon space, compounded upon sorrow, compounded upon disconnection, is the insurmountable grief that we sit on every day in this Holy Saturday moment.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I did mean it literally. When did you first meet grief? But it's and of course how we're meeting them in these spaces. It is just. Yeah. Thank you for sharing so deeply and so richly with us and letting us into that moment. Reverend Doyeon, I really want, these are wonderful because the next question, of course, and I'm mindful of our time, that we sort of how is it the death and the burial how is it welcomed in your faith tradition? And of course, the grief rituals, some of you have shared some of them, and then what would you offer to us in this moment from your faith tradition that we might be able to hold on to as we go? But so Reverend Doyeon, though, how was it when you first met grief, whether it's literally you want to answer, or how you've been journeying with grief in your community at One Buddhist Temple? over this last year?
Okay, thanks. I'm gonna try to combine all these questions, remembering the timeline here. So actually, I actually feel like Reverend Dillard, I also took the question literally. So I thought of my first kind of, the grief experience was definitely actually was also with my grandma when I was young. But then now I see that that was very fortunate for me because, my grandma had a really full life. So, it wasn't like any accidents, she had a good life of some 85 or 6. And then when she passed away, of course, it was, I was kind of shocked, like, the next morning I couldn't see my grandma. And when I asked my parents, they're like, literally, Doyeon, people are born and, when you get aged and then you go away. So like you kind of pass away. So I took it with my kind of family support. That was very natural process of life and death. And then of course, because we have this certain rituals at that time also. So I now see that that was my very healthy first experience of grief. So when I first hear that Reverend Dion, you're kind of personifying the grief, calling she and her, that was very refreshing for me. And then I thought that could be really, really helpful for a lot of us. And I remember also Reverend McQueen point out that, a lot of us, we have fear for this grief. But then we can have grief as our companion, as our friend. And maybe for me as a spiritual leader, as we have this space for our members and people coming into safe space, that we offer this space for people to think about, to see the grief as a part of our life. Actually, it is. And then a lot of Buddhist teaching, of course, we have these teachings and practices of seeing, when we think about life, we cannot separate from death and dying. So the grief definitely is a part of our life. And then Venerable TK mentioned that in the Buddhist practice, we have 49 days of kind of offering rituals for the deceased person. So it's, we usually offer like a weekly, so it totals 7 weeks. So for me in the beginning, I understood these rituals in a way to, right, we are kind of offering this chant, meditation, all these things for the person who passed away. So I thought, we're all doing this for the person who passed away. But then later, I thought, well, actually, it's really for us who live in this world. This 7 weeks offers this, as you said, this is a space for us to really kind of observe all, what happened. And then for this 7 weeks of periods that we go through the silence, meditation, offering chant and Dharma words, that I think it's the kind of healing process for us who left in this earth. So we kind of start from the, unbelievable kind of the pain and sorrow and the grief, and each week as we go through this process, we kind of start to see, okay, what is the best way to honor and remember this person? So now I see this 7 weeks of ceremony is it's our process, because everything, we need the different phase. We, as I said, if we see the grief as our dear friend, but then also, sometimes there are many different aspects of life that we need to acknowledge in life. Well, we can have a friend, like hopeful friend, who always brings our hope, but at the same time, we need to see this grief as our dear friend. And then we need time to kind of befriend, getting to know each other, understanding more and deeper. So I see this, particularly from the 7 weeks of what we call the deliverance service, is kind of offering us this creative kind of space for really kind of mourning and remembering the person who passed away, and then our relationship to that person. So one thing, one chant that actually we particularly read for this deliverance service has this kind of, I'm gonna translate in English here. We says, may you have eternal life like the universe. Your true self is infinite when you attain nirvana. May you be enlightened to the truth of life and death and blossom into an eternal flower. Step by step, every action becomes a divine sutra. So this is a kind of the chant that we offer. Actually, I do in Korean. But remembering this chanting, the teaching words is kind of way to connect myself and then who passed away. So I'm very grateful for this opportunity to, for all of us. I think I took it this opportunity as for me to kind of evolving my own personal, this process of grief, and then basically understanding life and death. So I really thank you for creating this space for all of us.
Thank you for it. I really appreciate it. And also to know that you don't always have to translate everything for us. We will journey with you. So please, please do a chat. We would welcome you to actually offer the blessing and the chant in Korean and to say it if you feel so led.
Oh, now? Yeah, I would love to share this, the chant. Particularly, we offer this for the deliverance service. So I will offer chant in Korean. 영천 영지 영보 장세 만세 멸도 상농로 거래각도 무궁화 보일체 대성경.
Thank you. Guruji, help us to pause.
त्र्यम्बकं यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनान् मृत्योर्मुक्षेयमामृतात् ॐ त्र्यम्बकं यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनान् मृत्योर्मुक्षेयमामृतात् ॐ त्र्यम्बकं यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनान् मृत्योर्मुक्षेयमामृतात् ॐ सर्वेषां स्वस्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां शान्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां पूर्णं भवतु सर्वेषां मङ्गलं भवतु सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामय सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
Thank you, Guruji. Dr. TK, will you help us pause?
Please join me in meditation. And so I'll ring the bell. This time maybe 3 times only, but then after that I'll do the Buddhist prayer for Japanese Buddhist prayer. Try to breathe in and out slowly and deeply using your lower stomach. May all living beings be happy, well, and peaceful. May we all be free from suffering. May we all be free from pain. May we all be free from attachment, from greed, anger, and ignorance. May we all attain ultimate happiness and peace of enlightenment through the guidance of Buddha's wisdom and compassion. Namo Amida. Namo Amida.
Namaste. Peace to you,
Peace to you.
both of you. I know that Dr. TK and Guruji, you must leave us now for another program. And so we offer a great gratitude for you for centering us and allowing us to pause. Are there one thing that you would have from us, from your tradition, what we can all use to help us during this time? One thing that you might offer?
All are living as a universe we made of 5 elements. So make sure this is a short life from the first breath to the last breath. Love each other, care about everyone. That's it. Nothing else we can.
So for me, from the changing nature, probably as Doyeon mentioned also, but since we live in a changing nature, means as long as we are born, we always face the death somewhere, or anytime even. So which means everything changes. Then what would be the important moment that you can spend is probably the present moment. Now, what I can do, and once you start focusing everything is a present moment to try to accept everything what's happening, then life may open up something. So I think that one of the wisdom is try to focus on the present moment as much as you can, and yourself as much as you can, and then then after that, let it go and just be with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you both. Blessings on you. Blessings on you both. Namaste. Blessings.
Namaste. Thank you. I'm going to leave. Sayonara.
Yes. I know that our time is short, it's coming to a close. And we do have libation that we're going to be engaging in. This just shows me how much we need to have this. And we have to gather again to be able to have prolonged conversation about this, and also a learning. I think there is a learning that we need, and the traversing together does not negate our own individual faith traditions. It only deepens it. And so I just want to say thank you to each of you for coming. And I need Pastor McQueen to share a little bit about about our table, about a table across time, and what we have been doing for that. And then before we go into our libation and close, there is a song. I know I need to get Naomi's song in here somehow, and Rabbi, for you to set that up, and then to do our libation all in 17 minutes. But if you could please share with us, Pastor McQueen, it's clear that Mawasi, we're going to have to bring you back on again. And even if we just do a whole session about this, we must. But Pastor McQueen, would you just share a little bit about a table across time for those who have joined us that are not aware and joined us for today?
Certainly. Oh, I'm sorry. I was reading the chat. Sorry about that. What I wanted to let you know is that around the time of the election, many of us sort of came together who were multi-faith leaders and decided that we needed to sort of be a witness in our own selves, in our own faith, not trying to figure out how we can deal with what the outcome of the election was going to be, but to make a commitment to be in a circle of faith, in a circle of love, and we decided to call it Circle Up. So we gathered that day after the election, actually, and gathered together at downtown across from Washington Square Park, and it became a wonderful witness, not to the election, but to the community at large and what our hopes and dreams were. And we've been meeting regularly, and we've been trying to figure out how to keep our multi-faith conversations moving forward. And today is one of those times. So the table across time has been a way that we've decided that we wanted to sort of celebrate and to be with one another during these high holy day seasons. So last week, as Rabbi Amichai sort of brought forward, we celebrated Freedom Feast, the Freedom Feast Seder with LabShul, with many multi-faith partners. And it was a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And as we were talking and brainstorming, we decided that, Saturday is one of those times, Holy Saturday is one of those times it's not really commemorated. As Reverend Dion said, we're so busy trying to go from Good Friday to Easter, we don't stop and pause and think about what that moment is for, and contextually for people who had to witness hope die on a cross, and to think about what that meant to be in that moment in space and time. So here we are, just saying Selah and making a break and tuning that moment. And then we will also be celebrating Ramadan with our Muslim brothers and sisters, and we will be planning and putting together an iftar where we will all take part in this once again, because it's interesting and beautiful how all of our rituals as we move forward in these next couple of years are moving closer and closer together. And I think that the universe has a way of saying that this table across time is a table to which we are all invited, to which we all come together and journey and speak the language of faith, and speak and hear one another's traditions, and how we can sort of learn and share with one another, with our communities, what it is that we have to offer. How's that?
Great. Wonderful. And it is amazing. And thank you so much for that. Just so that you all will know, and we're trying to, of course, to share and to keep our community in. So we will extend that as well, as much as we can on Saturday Selah. Naz, before you leave, because we know that you also have to leave early, thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum to you. Please, is there something that you would offer from the Muslim faith that we can journey with as we are going through these Holy Saturday moments? Hey, no, you're muted.
Sorry. We just heard from our Buddhist brothers and our Buddhist friends about being present in the moment, and also about attaining to nirvana and everlasting life. And once we attain to that, we don't sort of feel the pain that we experience in earth. So from the Muslim tradition, it is about being in the present moment, but it is about being in the present moment with the higher realm, with the thought of the eternal and with the practice. That wasn't that boring, was it?
No.
With the practice that we are always with the eternal. And I just wanted to leave you with the thought that came to my mind. And it's actually a very small meditation that we do every Sunday and every Friday. And it, honestly, the best way to describe it is that the sounds, God has sounds, and the sounds that we experience in the universe are not from human beings, but they're sounds, they're universal sounds and part of God's sounds. And they are emanations of God's divine names or his attributes. And one of the sounds of God or God's attributes that we meditate on is simply who. And I wanted to just take something from the biblical tradition, knowing that it's Easter, and something that I'm reminded of almost every Friday and every Sunday as we empty our emotions, as we empty our thoughts, as we empty our beings from all the currents that run between us and take a breath. I'm actually reminded of the words of the Bible where God says, "Be still and know that I am." And this is very equivalent to the meditation that we do, where we take a deep breath and we exhale, where our exhale is twice as long as our inhale. And we do it once again. And we hold the breath in and we stay still as God reflects within our beings. And we exhale. And one last time, as we inhale, I wanted all of us to join me in saying who and extending it. One more time. Who. May we feel the presence of an Almighty God, of the cherisher of the universe, of the cherisher of you and me, and may that sustain us. Amen.
Amen. And peace be unto you, my dear sister Nas. Thank you for joining us and being with us. And so I will say now that Rabbi Amichai, if you would, there's a Song of Mourning that we have, and our dear sister Naomi Les, founding ritual leader of LabShul, is singing the Hamakomin. Am I pronouncing it correctly? She is singing that, and it was the melody by our dear Aviva. And then we will close our time together with Mawasi, and she's taking us through libation. So for those of you who are able to stay, I will not rush through libation. I will not. I will honor the ancestors. I will not rush through libation. But I want for us, because again, this is the ancestral tradition, African ancestral tradition for us. And for me, it is so necessary. And I think I need it after the weight of the week. And the weight of everything. But I want to honor all of our traditions that are here. So for those of you who've joined us today, please know that Saturday Selah will continue. And we're taking this time just up until Pentecost. If Spirit says otherwise, we'll go beyond, but we are going to be joining. And it will not be always these kinds of conversations, but I'm prayerful we will gather all again. So those of you, thank you for joining us for the time. If you're able to stay through libation, it will not be much longer, but we want to stay beyond the 12th time. We're going to have Rabbi Amichai, you will please set us up for this. Tell us about the morning, the Song of Mourning, and offer us to what we might be able to walk with from our Jewish tradition as we go through these Holy Saturday moments. And then Mawasi.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister D. As we heard earlier, Reverend Dillard, your beautiful names. I grateful to you for giving us the notion of space, of that proximity of space. So one of the names in Hebrew for the divine is Hamakom, which means the space or the place. And as we just heard so beautifully from Naz, Hu is like one of the attributes of the divine as well. It means he. And with all due respect to patriarchy, the divine that I lean into for my Semitic tradition is beyond gender. So Hamakom, the place, the space, is like neither gendered, no space, no time, but it's the sense of being in place. And so the chant that Naomi is going to lead us with in just a moment is what is used when people visit mourners. And we say to each other upon mourning, Hamakom Yenachem, may the sense of space and spaciousness be that which comforts you. And with that, I wish for all of us to find the spaciousness within and beyond to help be each other's comforters.
So grateful for you. Thank you. Forgive me.
May you find comfort. May you find comfort. May you find comfort in love. May you find comfort. May you find comfort. May you find comfort in love. Hamakom Yenachem etchem b'toch sha'ar Avlei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. Hamakom Yenachem etchem, Yenachem etchem.
Shalom. Mawasi, will you and us, dear Aya, Reverend Estee and Nena Dillard will close us out with our libation. Again, I am so deeply grateful and moved. I am reminded of the tears, of the parting, of the ripping, of the holding of the space. I am deeply grateful for you as conversation partners, all of you who have gathered. Pastor McQueen and St. James Presbyterian Church, Naz, thank you so very much, Naz, and the entire Muslim community that joins us. Reverend Doyeon, so grateful for the One Buddhist community. Rabbi Amichai and LabShul, so grateful for you and for your witness. Mawasi, my sister, thank you, and please close us. Please close us today with libation. And thank you all for joining us for Selah Space.
I'm so grateful to God. I'm so grateful to Spirit. I'm so grateful to our collective ancestors. When I was preparing for this moment, Spirit took me to the Exodus story. When I was preparing for this moment today, Spirit took me to the edge of the Reed Sea. And in my intellect, in my mind, I thought, that doesn't make sense. We're supposed to be at the tomb today. So I offer this truth before I enter into the moment of libation.
to say that when we are in that space where it seems that there's no other voice we can hear, when we are in that space, when it seems that there is no one but us alone, when we are in that space, when it seems that our voice might be hitting the wall and only ricocheting to our ear in solitude, that God is yet listening, that our ancestors are yet moving, that spirit is yet speaking, and that work and transformation are yet happening within us and among us. Libation is a ritual of the West African tradition, but it is an iteration that we see globally where we take a moment to engage Mother Earth with her own elements by pouring out of ourselves and calling in to ourselves. As we go into this libation moment today, I ask that you breathe first. And remember that this is an opportunity to pour into the water as we go to the edge, to release, to lay our burdens down, and to hold space for what it is that we would like to feel what we have left at the water's edge today. You can respond to any of the names or statements that I offer in this moment by saying Ashe, a Yoruba word meaning it is so, by saying Amen, by saying it is so, or whatever word comes out of your spirit, an affirmation to share your own life force and sacred energy with this moment. May we enter into libation together. In the spirit of our ancestors, in the spirit of our sacred and ancient traditions, in the spirit of those who have come before us, we first take a moment to pause and call on God Almighty, sovereign God, the one who we know is with us and among us, sacred divinity that desires to reach out of the infinite moments of time into this specific moment for our gathering today. We say Ashe. We call on our sacred deities, the deities of our traditions. We call on those like Jehovah Rapha, our healing God. We call on those like Yemoja, our West African mother. We call on those like Olokun, our deity of the oceans that takes us to the water's edge. Ashe.
Ashe.
As we gather in this moment, may we take the opportunity to hold space for what has been lost, to hold space for what we have named today. Take me to the water. Take me to the water. Take me to the water to be baptized. We gather at the water's edge, naming what it is we cannot name. We gather at the water's edge in anticipation that the waters will move and change and make space for us, in anticipation of freedom and liberation, in anticipation of healing. Ashe.
Ashe.
But we gather at the water's edge knowing that that time has not yet come. Knowing that in this moment, we hold the weight a little too tough to carry, knowing that in this moment, we hold a sound a little too loud for the vibration of our bodies. We come in this moment, knowing that as we stand at the water's edge, we can see and imagine the hope of resurrection. But today, we sit at the water that's in the bottom of the tomb. We sit at the water that's at our feet. We sit at the waters of the streams of our homes. We sit in the waters that flow through our bodies. We sit in the waters that hold us up. We sit in the waters of our tears. The tears of those who we have lost to a pandemic. We sit in the waters of our ancestors. We sit in the tears and the waters of those who have come and traversed this space before, because pandemic is not new, it's just unprecedented. So we come entering into this moment knowing that as we sit with the multiple pandemics of racism and xenophobia and homophobia, the pandemics of not having access and clean water to drink, and the pandemics of not being able to have healthcare, we come pouring out what we cannot hold.
Ashe.
We come to the water's edge, grateful that we are present. We come to the water's edge, praying for our safety. We come to the water's edge, still in betwixt and in between, still in the not yet, but in the right now. Calling our help. I love Jesus. I love Jesus. I love Jesus. Yes, I do. Even in the tomb, we still love him. Even when our elders are absent from us, we still love them. Even when we can't hug our parents, we still love them. Even when we can't reach our children and our siblings, we still love them. Even when we can't see our resurrected bodies, we still love what God is yet doing. And we stand here, strengthened for the journey, fortified for what is next, calling in our destiny and knowing that right now is enough. Ashe, ashe, asheo.
It is so. It is so. In the in-between space, we thank you, Mawasi, for taking us through to the water's edge. We thank you all who are gathered. Go now, standing knowing that you've been strengthened by the waters. And even the ripping will hold us. Even the God who can hold us in the ripping will hold us in the healing and in the Selah. Blessings upon you today. Shalom gather you today. Ashe, Amen, Amin, and Selah. Until we meet again. Thank you all. God bless you.
Thank you all.
Namaste.
Thank you.
Brother Jerry, Reverend Simmons, I just saw you. God bless you. Thank you so very much. Reverend Simmons will be joining us for another one of our Saturday Selah so that he can share with us a little bit more about the Ma'afa. And thank you so much. God bless you, Reverend Simmons. I see you, you're at work. You're at work. So I bless God for you. I bless God for you. And so perhaps you and Mawasi can come back and we can have another conversation about it. So thank you so very much about that. So grateful for you, Pastor Giddings. Thank you so much. See you so much, Reverend Giddings and Reverend Stephanie. I'm so grateful for you. Sister Denise, God bless you. Sister Leah, God bless you. Thank you for joining us. Brother Leibowitz, blessings on you. Thank you for joining us this morning. And thank you. Go in peace today. Go in peace. Reverend Powellmore, I see you now. I see you. I see you. Reverend Powellmore, God bless you. Thank you, my dear brother. I love you to life. Thank you. We'll have you on one of our Saturday Selahs. I hope. We bless you. But pause today, family. Take a nap and take it all in. Ashe. God bless you.